The containment field hummed with barely restrained energy as Varkun prowled the perimeter of the damaged cargo bay. The massive creature stood nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder, its obsidian scales reflecting the emergency lights in crimson streaks. 3 rows of crystalline spines ran along its back, each one capable of launching projectiles that could pierce starship hulls. The Warbeast had killed 17 soldiers during its rampage through Outpost Gamma, before the cruiser's crew managed to subdue it. Now, Sergeant Alara Dune stood alone before the creature, her hand hovering near her sidearm but not drawing it. She had been ordered to guard the beast while the ship's xenobiologist determined what to do with it. Through the translucent barrier, Varkun's 6 eyes fixed on her with an intelligence that made her skin crawl. This was no mindless monster. "Easy there, big guy," Alara said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words but hoping her tone might convey something. "Nobody's going to hurt you if you stay calm." Varkun released a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plating. Then, to Alara's shock, the creature turned away from her and moved toward the far corner of the containment field. There, hidden behind a stack of emergency supplies, were 2 smaller shapes. Cubs. The Warbeast had cubs. Alara's breath caught as she watched the massive predator nuzzle the 2 infant creatures, each no larger than a human child. They chirped and climbed over their parent with all the clumsy affection of puppies. One cub had already begun developing the signature spines, though they were still soft and flexible. The other bore a scar across its snout, likely from the battle that had brought them all here. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Sergeant Dune, report to the bridge immediately. Command has made a decision regarding the creature." Ilara's stomach tightened. She knew what that meant. The Warbeast had caused too much damage, killed too many people. There would be no mercy, no sanctuary. And the cubs would die with their parent, or worse, be taken for experimentation. She looked at Varkun, and the creature looked back. In those alien eyes, Alara saw something she recognized. Not rage or bloodlust, but desperation. The desperation of a parent trying to protect their young, Sergeant Dune acknowledged. Alara made a decision that would either end her career or define it. Acknowledged. On my way. She approached the containment field controls and with practiced efficiency adjusted the parameters. Not enough to free Varkun, but enough to create a small gap at ground level. The Warbeast immediately tensed, spines rising. "Listen to me," Alara said firmly, meeting those 6 eyes. "I don't know if you can understand, but I'm giving you a chance. You're babies. Let me take them somewhere safe, just for a while." Varkun remained absolutely still. Then, slowly, deliberately, the creature nudged the 2 cubs toward the gap in the containment field. The babies tumbled through, chirping in confusion, and Alara quickly scooped them up. They were heavier than they looked, their scales warm against her uniform. "I'll keep them safe," she promised. "I swear it." The Warbeast watched her walk away, its spine slowly lowering. 3 days passed. 3 days during which Alara hid the cubs in her personal quarters, feeding them ration paste mixed with protein supplements, keeping them quiet when officers passed in the corridors. She filed reports claiming the cubs had been killed in the initial confrontation. Meanwhile, Varkun remained docile in containment, no longer aggressive, simply waiting. The cubs grew rapidly. Already they were twice their initial size, and the scarred one had begun to recognize Alara's voice. They would chirp excitedly when she returned from her shifts, climbing over each other to reach her first. She named them Ash and Ember, though she knew she shouldn't get attached. On the 4th day, the ship's captain discovered her secret. Captain Oren stood in her quarters, staring at the 2 alien cubs as they played with a length of supply cable. "Sergeant Dune," he said quietly, "do you have any idea what you've done? Falsifying reports, harboring dangerous xenofauna, directly disobeying containment protocols." "Me?" "Yes, sir," Alara replied, standing at attention. "I do. The Council wants that creature executed. They want all evidence of the Varkun species collected for weapons research." He paused, watching Ember pounce on Ash's tail. "They're terrified of what these things represent." "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted. They should be terrified of what we represent if we become the kind of species that murders children because their parent fought back when we invaded their territory." "Captain." Oren was silent for a long moment. Then he knelt down, extending his hand toward Ash. The cub approached cautiously, sniffed his fingers, then butted its head against his palm like a cat. The captain's stern expression softened. "I have a daughter," he said, "about your age. She once brought home a wounded predator from the forests of New Terra. It had killed 3 colonist livestock. My daughter nursed it back to health, and when it recovered, she released it into a protected reserve. He stood, brushing scale dust from his hands. That creature's descendants now help control the invasive species threatening the colony's ecosystem. He met Ilara's eyes. Sometimes mercy is more strategic than violence. Sometimes compassion is the greatest strength we possess. 2 hours later, Ilara stood before Varkun's containment field once more. The cubs were cradled in her arms, clean and well-fed. The massive warbeast rose immediately, pressing against the barrier, a keening sound emerging from its throat. The captains arranged for a transport, Ilara explained, even though she still didn't know if the creature understood. A sanctuary planet in the neutral zone. No military, no weapons research. Just open territory where you and your babies can live in peace. She stepped through the deactivated field and Varkun froze. Slowly, carefully, Ilara set the cubs down. They scrambled toward their parent, chirping frantically. The warbeast gathered them close, examining every inch of them, then raised its massive head to look at Ilara. The creature took one step toward her. Then another. Ilara's hand instinctively moved to her weapon, but she forced it away. Varkun lowered its enormous head until its snout was inches from her face. Hot breath washed over her. Those 6 eyes studied her with profound intensity. Then Varkun did something that would be recorded in first contact protocols for centuries to come. The creature bowed, lowering its body in a gesture of unmistakable respect, its deadly spines flattening completely against its back. Captain Oren, watching from the observation deck, spoke into his comm. Note for the record, humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our irrational, stubborn, beautiful refusal to let cruelty be the default. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is choose kindness when violence would be easier. Ilara placed her hand on Varkun's scarred snout. "You're welcome," she whispered. "Be safe out there." As the transport ship carried the warbeast family toward freedom, Ilara stood at the viewport watching until they vanished into the stars. Behind her, Ash and Ember's siblings, a full litter that Varkun had hidden during the initial confrontation, chirped from the crate they'd been recovered in. She smiled. It was going to be a long journey to the sanctuary planet, but she'd make sure every single one of them survived. Because that's what humans did. They protected the vulnerable even when it defied logic, even when it was dangerous, even when the universe itself seemed to demand otherwise. And that, more than any weapon, was why humanity would endure among the stars.